Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... Although February is the Women in Horror Month, it's also Black History Month. And even though I began this month by reviewing female horror authors, I would really like to wrap up the month by reviewing horror books that have been written by Black authors. Now, in the past, I have tried to honor Black History Month by reading books that were written by Black authors that paid homage to the horror genre, and I had read books by Tananarive Due, Octavia E. Butler. Even though she's more so sci-fi, she still has that whole disturbing aspect going on, so she still falls under that dark fiction category. Also, I had read Beloved by Toni Morrison, and that's more so of a literature side to the ghost story versus just something to frighten you, even though it's still disturbing. And when it came time to pick books to review for this year, I had considered doing a reread of one of those authors, but I really wanted to try something new. And this was also when I realized all of the books that I had read before were by Black females. So I really hadn't given the Black man a chance when it came down to writing horror. So I went online to a few book groups that I'm a part of, and I had asked if there were any horror authors people could recommend that were Black men. And a few people responded that they really did not pay attention to race when it came down to authors. And I guess that's all right. I'm not going to bash anyone for that opinion. If that's your preference, that's your preference. But I really feel that it is important to pay attention to different ethnic groups when it comes down to authors. Because the thing is, especially with the horror genre and even sci-fi and fantasy, you can have an age-old subject that's been done over and over and over, but you bring in a different race to write about that subject, and you're going to get a different viewpoint of that subject. And the thing is, this is what I really learned by reading the authors that I previously mentioned. You can take a typical subject such as the ghost story, and it's something that you've read over and over. It's been recycled numerous times. But then when you get a perspective such as Toni Morrison's on Beloved, you have this whole other world that just opens up in front of you. And not only is it this way with Black authors, but authors of any race. Whenever you seek out a different race, you are definitely going to get some more culture with what you're reading. So I really urge for people to try to read beyond just one race. Now, even though I didn't find any help in the book groups, I did my research online, and one name kept popping up, and that was Victor Lavalle. And more specifically, it was his book, The Ballad of Black Tom. So I slammed my money down and got the audiobook version, and I loved it so much I couldn't help but buy the hard copy. So by the time I had finished this book, I'd already added a few more Victor Lavalle books into my shopping cart, and those are about to be in my to-be-read pile. So without further ado, it's time to find out what Victor Lavalle has in store for us. The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Lavalle is divided into two parts. It begins where we have the point of view from Tom, and then about midway through we gain the point of view from Detective Malone. Now, with this book, it does take place in the 1920s, so it's appropriate for this decade, but I think specifically it takes place in 1924. But it does take place in Harlem, and it also introduces the main character named Tom. And Tom lives in a slum apartment with his disabled father named Otis. And even though Otis really tries hard to encourage Tom to get honest work, Tom really feels like honest work is not going to pay the bills. So this is why he's a hustler. And even though Tom has a lot of hustles going on, his main hustle is trying to convince people that he is a good jazz musician when the poor man only knows like maybe 2 or 3 songs, and that's it. Well, one day, Tom is on the street playing his guitar, and he's approached by the rich white man named Robert Suidon. And Robert comes up to Tom and explains that he really likes Tom's music and he would like for Tom to play at his upcoming party. And to seal the deal, he offers to pay Tom $500 for doing this. Well, $500 in the 1920s, that's a lot of money. So Tom accepts, he runs home and explains to his father that he's going to take on this gig, and immediately Otis is like really apprehensive because, I mean, it's going to be a black guy in a rich white neighborhood late at night in the 1920s. This is all the ingredients for a disaster waiting to happen. Well, despite his father feeling uneasy about this, Tom goes to Robert's mansion anyway, but once he gets there, he discovers he is not playing for a party. Instead, he's playing for an occult ritual. And this is an occult ritual that is really going to raise some hell and wake up an elder sleeping god. And once this is done, if he participates and helps Robert do this, then the two of them and the elder god will have dominion over our world. Since the Ballad of Black Tom is a fresh take on the Cthulhu mythos, I would like to focus on the history of Cthulhu. Upon hearing the name Cthulhu, the word chthonic comes to mind, and if you didn't know, chthonic is Greek in origin and comes from the late 19th century. It means concerning to, belonging to, or inhabiting the underworld, and as you may have guessed, this definition fits Cthulhu perfectly. Cthulhu made his debut in Weird Tales magazine in the story The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. And since then, this elder god has become a pop culture icon. After Lovecraft introduced the world to this evil, the author named August Derleth coined the Cthulhu mythos, which eventually became an umbrella term for many authors who contributed Cthulhu-based works. Fun facts! In the searches that I did on Victor Lavalle, here's what I found out. As a child, Lavalle grew up in Flushing, Queens, where one of his favorite pastimes was reading H.P. Lovecraft. As an adult, Lavalle held Lovecraft, Stephen King, Shirley Jackson, and Clive Barker as his main sources of inspiration. However, as an adolescent, Lavalle was unaware to the racist tones in Lovecraft's work. But after recognizing Lovecraft's racism, Lavalle decided to respond with a reimagining of one of Lovecraft's most iconic elder gods. And while the Ballad of Black Tom tributes Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos, it is also a rebellious work that presents a minority perspective. And what is most interesting and understandable is the dedication in the Ballad of Black Tom, which reads, "For H.P. Lovecraft, with all of my conflicted feelings." Also, the Ballad of Black Tom zones in on Lovecraft's most xenophobic work, The Horror at Red Hook. Now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoiler section of this video. And this is going to be where I reveal some scenes and character development that could ruin the book for you if you've never read it before. If you wish to avoid this section, just scroll down to the comment section of the video and you'll see that I have a comment pinned at the top that has a timestamp provided within it. If you click that timestamp, it will redirect you away from the spoilers and to the thoughts section of this video. All you have to do is scroll down and click. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this. So, ready, set, go. Now that everyone has had a chance to click away, I would like to talk about the grand finale of this book. And oh my damn! when Lavelle wants to give it to a mother, he can give it to a mother. And in this scene, there is so much shit that goes down. It's like you got shit over here, shit over there, up there, down there, all around. It's a full shitstorm, baby. And the thing is, like, my ADD self, I'm like, I don't know what horror to comprehend before I'm hit with something else. And so let me paint the picture for you here. Okay, so Robert and his cult, and by the way, Tom is his right-hand man at this point. Robert and his cult have built this underground tabernacle, and this has all been done in like Queens. You have where all of these apartment complexes are next door to one another, and we get the idea that they share a space that is like this huge walled up area for a basement. And so they knock out all the walls and just make it this sacrificial ritualistic chamber. And you have Detective Malone who goes down in there to investigate. And he looks over there and sees this crooked cop by the name of Howard. And Howard has been tied down to a chair where Tom has taken Otis's straight razor and has scalped Howard. And even though we don't necessarily see him do this, we get the after effects of it because he's using Howard's scalp to like write incantations and lyrics and stuff on the tabernacle walls. Well, while this is happening, you have Robert who's like in a ceremonial garb and he's like all high and mighty and shit, and he thinks that nothing's gonna bother him. Well, Tom, he's tired of playing second fiddle, so he goes over to Robert and slits his throat. And this is where we start going uphill a little bit more with the intensity because Lavelle takes the opportunity to describe to us how it sounds when Tom slits Robert's throat. And the thing is, Robert tries to scream, and so it's just this really grisly, gruesome moment. But here's the scene that really made my asshole pucker. So, Detective Malone is like in shell shock at this point, and you have where Tom has taken the detective over to where the vortex is opening up, and our world is about to bleed with the forbidden world. And so, Detective Malone is down on his knees, and Tom takes the straight razor and he cuts away Detective Malone's eyelids. It's just, it's so cringeworthy. It's so simple and cringeworthy, and it's so tangible just when Tom starts cutting away his eyelids. And now you have Detective Malone who is forced to look into the other world and see Cthulhu awaken. And then all of a sudden, this nightmare is over. We get the idea that the worlds have now collided. The gate is not closed, and it's going to remain open. Tom vanishes, and the kicker to this is you have where Detective Malone actually lives through this. And I think that's pretty damn messed up because he's going to go the rest of his life disfigured. He doesn't have eyelids. He is forced to look at everything around him, can't even blink, can't even close them to sleep. All he can do is just wear these goggles where people can't see how disfigured he is, and he has to continuously like put eye drops in his eyes. Well, the thing is, since the gate has never been closed and we learn that time is different in that other world than it is in our natural world, the world is still going to end. Cthulhu is going to reign, and we get these elements and hints that it's going to happen soon. And I don't know about you, but that's just really messed up. I mean, you got your eyelids cut away, and then you're going to have to be forced to watch some, like, puss-face creature just destroy everything? That's some messed up shit. I totally understand why Tom wants the world to end. I mean, hell, he grew up in poverty, his mom died when he was young, his dad is disabled, and he's been forced to street hustle in order to make ends meet for himself and his father. Not to mention, he has this asshole cop named Howard who's constantly harassing him. Now, we do get the idea that Tom is living for himself, but also at the same time, we really get the idea he's living more so for his father, and his father is his means of just putting his best foot forward as well as he can. And the thing is, after Otis gets murdered, this is when we see Tom, who completely goes derailed and decides that he wants this world to suffer as much as himself. And by the way, how Otis gets murdered is dirty as hell, because what happens is Tom returns home to his apartment after being at Robert Suidon's, and when he gets to his apartment, he sees like these barricades and cops and reporters, the whole 9 yards is there. Well, what he finds out is asshole Howard here had kicked down the front door of his apartment. Howard and Detective Malone went inside and saw Otis in his bed holding a guitar. Well, asshole Howard here says that he thought it was a gun because of the poor lighting, so he shot Otis 11 times. So anyway, as you can imagine, this bullshit artist here has just given this whole cockamamie story, and the press has pretty much just written it off. Oh, it's just a dead black man. No story here. All right, we'll keep moving. And at this point, Tom's like, no, I'm sick of this bullshit. I want the world to hurt as much as I have. It's time to make a pact with old Pussface and watch this mother burn. What I really found interesting about the Ballad of Black Tom is there's a scene where Tom explains he has become the monster that the world has made him. And even though this speaks volumes about his character, in a sense, it is also Lavalle's way of rebelling against Lovecraft. And what I mean by that is, with Lovecraft, he was afraid of black people, women, other nationalities, and progress in general. So he was really just a racist, sexist, xenophobic, for lack of a better word, asshole. And if you read Lovecraft stories as a surface read, such as how Lavalle did when he was a kid, you can see that they're just scary stories. But once you understand the psychology behind what Lovecraft was producing, you can totally see he was a hate-fueled individual who put this in his work as well. Because with Lovecraft's work, all of the time, the victim is a white man, and the metaphorical monsters that Lovecraft created were honestly nothing more than what he was afraid of in life. You have the monsters that represent black people, different nationalities, women, and it's honestly nonstop. So with this, you have Lovecraft who made monsters out of what he feared, which was other races and genders. And with Lavalle, he ends up taking the black male character named Tom, and he ends up giving him power through this. He gives you the idea that if you're going to make a monster, you have to be ready for the repercussions you're going to receive by making that monster. And such as with Tom, he takes it and owns it. He's like, hey, if you're going to make me into a monster, I'm going to own it, and you have hell to pay for it. So that was really interesting to see how Lavalle created that, and it was just so simple with his statement. So it really did spell that out for me. Now, some ongoing themes that are in this book are the inequality in pay between races. We have crooked cops and xenophobia. The subject of inequality in pay comes about when you have Otis and Tom who are speaking. And Otis is trying to urge Tom into getting an honest paying job, which is what Otis had before he became disabled. Well, Tom is like, and this is Tom's words, Tom is like, what you were making was a Negro's pay. What I'm making doing this hustle, it's a white person's pay. So we definitely see how minorities were not treated equal with pay, especially during that time. Now, the subject of crooked cops comes about where you have Howard and Detective Malone. And Howard not only bullies Tom with every opportunity he gets, but Howard also kills an unarmed black man. And it's just swept under the rug. And no one really cares about it after it's done. And even though you have where Detective Malone could speak up at any moment or stop Howard from doing everything he does, Detective Malone never rises above. He just kind of stands to the side and lets it all happen. And the subject of xenophobia, it does come in lightly at the end. It's not as strong as the other subjects I had mentioned, but you can tell there's some xenophobia here, where when the apartment complexes that have been taken over by foreigners under Robert Suidon's control, they are being discussed about through the cops and such, and also the neighbors, and you can see that there is this pending feeling of dread or fear that these foreigners have come in and, I guess, taken the neighborhood. But even though I've noted that there are so many different discussions that can come from this book, Lavalle does a perfect job of supplying us with a story that you can enjoy as a surface read. At no point did I honestly feel like Lavalle was standing on a soapbox sermonizing or preaching to the audience. Lavalle did not do that whatsoever. He provided us with a solid horror story that is well deserving of its place in the Cthulhu mythos. And if you would like to read this book as a surface read, it's a great form of escapism. But at the same time, if you want to read this for something deeper than what it really is, you can do so and then have tons of great discussions afterwards. I really admire Victor Lavalle's style of writing. He has the ability to be able to take a gruesome scene and just use a few words to paint out what's going on in it. So I really have to applaud him for not overdoing anything. Now, he does have a great way of building character development and suspense and mystery, and because of all of these elements coming together, I really felt like this was a fresh take on the Cthulhu mythos, especially since it was coming from a black man's perspective. So this was really unique and something that I'm glad that I finally picked up, and my only regret is that I didn't pick it up sooner. So if you're interested in giving Victor Lavalle a shot, I haven't read anything else by him yet, but that is soon about to change. But I can say that this would be a great first book to read by this author. So I highly recommend. On to the questions. My first question is, what is a book that is in regards to the Cthulhu mythos that you would recommend for me to read? And secondly, now this is kind of a slippery slope here, but I'm hoping we can have a mature discussion and we can enlighten one another on this subject. But the second question is, let's say, for example, you have a creator who produces good content and great entertainment. However, that creator is a discriminatory person, or they've committed a crime that's pretty nasty, and they're still creating content. My question is, do you continue to support the content that they create, or do you just go in and cut ties? Now, as far as myself, if the creator was still alive and they were discriminatory, or they were like a rapist or murderer or something like that, I could not continue to support that creator out of a good conscience, because I would just feel guilty about knowing that my money is going to someone who is a hate monger, or someone who is a vicious or just horrible individual. So I can't do that. I just can't continue contributing to someone who is in that category of person. Now, if the creator was dead, I most likely would read their work, because I would feel like I'm really not contributing to them as an individual. They're dead, so they're not getting my money. But I would be curious to know exactly where my money is going, even though they have passed on. Like, is my money continuously going to someone who is just as much of a hate monger as they were? So that's something that I would be interested to learn about before I just slam my money down. But as I said, that's just me. I'm not going to judge anyone if you feel differently than that, but I am interested to see everyone's point of view on that subject. So please load up my comments on that. Now it's time to wrap up the video, and I would like to give a special shout out to Lisa G and Joseph Baylott for contributing to my Patreon account. If you would like to contribute as well, just go to the description section of this video, click on the link for my Patreon, and for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos. This money is used to be able to afford some more editing equipment and also to advertise and to just get some more props for the show. But if you're not able to contribute, no sweat. Just continue coming back to this channel and enjoying the videos, because the main purpose of this is just to connect with the horror community and be able to have good book discussions with horror readers. So if you can, you can. If not, that's fine too. And before I move on to other ways of how you can connect with me, I would like to give a special congratulations to Lisa G and Milos. They have been together for 17 years, and I hope they have many more happy years ahead of them. Now, if you would like to connect with me on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, just go to the description section of this video and you'll see all of those links available. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell, because I have many more book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, sweet nightmares.